2 seconds. That's all Bumpy Johnson had, 2 seconds to make a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. February 21, 1965. Audubon Ballroom. 400 people watching Malcolm X take the stage, and 3 men with guns waiting to kill him. Bumpy knew it was coming. He was standing 10 feet behind Thomas Hagen, gun already in his hand, finger on the trigger. 1 bullet, 1 dead assassin. Malcolm lives. Then he saw her. A little girl, 6 years old, brown dress, white ribbons in her hair. She'd climbed onto her chair to see what the commotion was about, leaning right into the aisle, directly in the line of fire. That's when Malcolm turned, saw Bumpy, saw the gun, saw the impossible choice his friend was facing. And Malcolm smiled. He mouthed 3 words that would echo through Harlem for generations. "I die standing." 2 seconds later, the shotgun blast tore through the ballroom. But to understand those 2 seconds, you need to understand what brought these 2 men to that moment. Because this wasn't just an assassination. This was the culmination of a promise made 3 days earlier. February 14, 1965. Valentine's Day. 2:46 a.m. Malcolm X's house in Queens exploded in flames. Molotov cocktails through the bedroom windows. His wife Betty and their 4 daughters barely escaped. The oldest was 6, the same age as that little girl who'd climb onto a chair 3 days later. The girls stood in the freezing street in their nightgowns, crying, covered in soot, watching their home burn. Malcolm knew who did it: the Nation of Islam. Elijah Muhammad's enforcers, brothers he'd once trusted with his life. They wanted him dead for leaving, for exposing corruption, for speaking truth when silence was expected. The next morning, Bumpy Johnson walked into Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. No phone call, no flowers, just showed up at dawn wearing his tailored suit and fedora. He found Malcolm in the waiting room while doctors examined his daughters for smoke inhalation. Bumpy sat down beside him, didn't say hello, just got to the point. "Give me 48 hours. The men who did this won't see Wednesday." Malcolm stared at the floor, exhausted, traumatized. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "If you do that, I become everything they say I am. A hypocrite hiding behind a gangster's gun. You'd be alive. I'd be dead inside." Malcolm turned to face him. "I've spent 10 years preaching that violence breeds violence. I can't abandon that the moment I'm scared." Bumpy's jaw tightened. "This isn't about principles, Malcolm. This is about your wife. Your babies. They could have burned alive last night." "I know," Malcolm's voice cracked. "But if I let you kill for me, I destroy everything I've built. Violence for violence, blood for blood. That's the cycle I'm trying to break." Bumpy respected that answer, hated it, but respected it. "Then let me protect you, 24/7, my best men, armed, watching." Malcolm shook his head. "You're a dead man, Malcolm, you know that." "Maybe," Malcolm extended his hand, "but I'll die clean, I'll die standing." They shook hands. Bumpy held on for a moment longer than necessary. "They won't get away with it." "I know," Malcolm said quietly, "but don't do it for me. I've made my peace." At the door, Bumpy stopped. 3 days, Malcolm, I'm giving you 3 days to change your mind." Malcolm just smiled. "I won't." Saturday night, 2:47 a.m. Bumpy's phone rang. Jerome, 19-year-old busboy at a diner on Malcolm X Boulevard. He'd grown up 3 blocks from Bumpy's apartment. Like half the young men in Harlem, he knew exactly who to call when something felt wrong. "Mr. Johnson." Jerome's voice was shaking. "3 men just left my diner. Corner booth. They were talking about handling the preacher problem. Mentioned tomorrow. Mentioned Audubon. Mentioned shotguns." Bumpy sat up. "Names?" "One of them. They called him Hagen. Thomas Hagen." Bumpy closed his eyes. He knew that name. Nation of Islam enforcer. Cold. Efficient. A true believer who thought killing was holy work. "You did good, Jerome. Real good. Now forget you heard anything." Bumpy tried calling Malcolm, no answer. Sent word through every contact he had. Nothing came back. So on Sunday, February 21st, Bumpy Johnson broke his own rules. He went alone. 2:15 p.m., the Audubon Ballroom was filling fast. 400 people, families, students, old women who'd known Malcolm since he was a street hustler. Young men who saw him as the voice of a new America. Bumpy walked in wearing his dark suit. Nothing flashy. He carried power in silence. He didn't take a seat in the back. He moved into the crowd, positioning himself against a pillar on the left side. Row 5. Good sightlines. Close enough to act. Multiple exits visible. He scanned faces. Most were regulars. Malcolm's people, good people. But 3 weren't. Front section. 2 rows apart. 2 still. Not engaged with the opening speakers, just waiting. The one in the center, row 3, was Thomas Hagen. Bumpy recognized the dead look in his eyes. The stillness of a man who'd already decided to kill. Bumpy's hand moved under his jacket, felt the weight of his .38 revolver. He could walk down that aisle right now. 2 quick shots. Hagen and his backup dead before they hit the floor. But 400 witnesses. Panic. Stampede. Innocent people crushed. And Malcolm would just die tomorrow instead. You can't stop fanatics by killing one. They're a sickness. You have to cut out the whole infection. So Bumpy stood by the pillar, watched, waited. Near the front, a father held his daughter on his lap. She couldn't have been more than 6, brown dress, white ribbons in her hair. She reminded Bumpy of Malcolm's daughters, the ones who'd barely escaped the fire 3 nights ago. These people deserved to be safe. 2:40 p.m. Brothers and sisters, I present to you Malcolm X. 400 people stood, applauded. Malcolm walked onto the stage. Simple dark suit, no security, no bodyguards, just a man and his message. He raised his hands for quiet. The applause faded. Everyone sat. Assalamu alaikum. Walaikum assalam, the crowd responded. Bumpy's eyes never left Hagen. Then chaos. Someone in the middle section jumped up shouting, "Get your hand out of my pocket. What's wrong with you?" Classic distraction. Make everyone turn. Create confusion. In that moment, the killer moves. Thomas Hagen stood, his coat fell open, the sawed-off shotgun appeared. Cut down, brutal, designed to destroy. Bumpy's .38 was already in his hand, halfway out of his jacket, finger on the trigger. 10 feet. Easy shot. Angle clean. Then he saw her. The little girl. She'd climbed onto her chair to see the commotion, leaning back into the aisle, white ribbons catching the light. Directly between Bumpy and Hagen. If Bumpy fired now, the bullet would go through her before it ever reached Hagen. Bumpy's jaw clenched. He stepped left to clear the shot. Blocked by people standing up. Right, same problem. That's when Malcolm turned. Not toward Hagen, toward Bumpy, as if he'd known all along that Bumpy would be there. For 2 seconds that felt like hours, their eyes met. In that frozen moment, Malcolm understood everything. He saw the gun in Bumpy's hand, the desperation in his friend's face, the impossible mathematics of violence, the little girl between them. Innocent, oblivious. Malcolm knew Bumpy could pull that trigger, knew the bullet would tear through that child before reaching Hagen. Knew Bumpy was silently asking him a question no man should ever have to answer. Is your life worth hers? Malcolm had spent 10 years preaching that one life wasn't more valuable than another, that children were sacred, that violence in the name of justice was still violence, that the means mattered as much as the ends. Now he had to prove it. Not with words, not with speeches, with a choice. Malcolm gave Bumpy the only answer a man of principle could give. He shook his head, slowly, deliberately. Then he smiled, not fear, not panic, acceptance, and mouthed 3 words. I die standing. Bumpy's finger froze on the trigger. The man in front of Bumpy shifted, blocking the view entirely. Boom! The shotgun blast was deafening. By the time Bumpy's line of sight cleared, Malcolm was stumbling backward, blood spreading across his chest. He tried to stay on his feet, tried to stand, but 2 more men rushed the stage with pistols, firing, 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 firing. 16 bullets found Malcolm X. He fell. And Bumpy Johnson, the man who'd stopped Dutch Schultz, who'd faced down the Italian mafia, who'd killed without hesitation for 30 years, stood frozen, gun in hand, unable to save the one man who mattered most. The ballroom erupted, screaming, crying, people diving under chairs, mothers throwing themselves over children. Thomas Hagen turned and ran for the exit, shotgun still in his hands. Something inside Bumpy snapped. Not explosive, cold, lethal. He moved fast, smooth, predatory. He couldn't fire his gun. Too many people. One shot and innocent people die in the crossfire. So Bumpy ran. 15 feet. 10. 5. Hagen reached the exit door. 30 seconds from freedom. Bumpy lunged low, swept his leg forward. hooked Hagen's ankle with perfect precision. Hagen's momentum carried him forward, but his feet went backward. He crashed face first onto the polished floor. The shotgun flew from his hands. Bumpy kicked it hard, sent it sliding under overturned chairs. Hagen scrambled to his knees, reached for the pistol in his waistband. Bumpy grabbed his wrist, twisted. The revolver clattered away. Then Bumpy did something unexpected. He didn't kill Hagen, didn't beat him, didn't pull his own gun. If Bumpy fired, he'd be the only man with a smoking gun when the cops arrived. It would turn a martyrdom into a gangland shootout. More importantly, dead men don't talk. Hagen needed to talk, needed to say who gave the order, who funded it, who sanctioned it. And this man took Malcolm from the people, so Bumpy was going to give him back to the people. He grabbed Hagen by the collar, lifted him halfway up, then shoved him backward into the surging crowd. 20 men rushed forward. They'd just watched Malcolm X get murdered, and now the killer was right there. A fist connected with Hagen's jaw. Then another, then 5 more. Bumpy stepped back, let them have him. He leaned close to the mob, voice low but carrying. Don't let him run. Make him answer for what he did. The crowd understood. They pinned Hagen to the floor like a wild animal. Police sirens wailed outside. Bumpy Johnson walked calmly toward the side exit, through the chaos, through the crying, through the smoke still hanging in the air. By the time police flooded through the front doors, Bumpy was 3 blocks away, disappearing into Harlem streets like he'd never been there at all. Malcolm X was pronounced dead at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital at 3:30 p.m., 16 gunshot wounds, 39 years old, gone. Bumpy didn't go to the hospital. Too many cops, too many questions. Instead, he went to St. Philip's Church, small, quiet, empty on a Sunday evening. He sat in the last pew, alone, still wearing his jacket, blood on the sleeve, Malcolm's blood. Father Callahan found him there an hour later. I was 10 feet away, Bumpy said quietly. I had my gun out, I could have stopped it. But there was a little girl, 6 years old, right in the line of fire. The priest sat down. So you chose the child's life over Malcolm's? Malcolm chose it. Bumpy's voice cracked. He looked at me, saw my gun, shook his head, told me to let him go. Then you gave him what he wanted. I gave him death. You gave him dignity. Malcolm lived his entire life preparing to die for his beliefs. You didn't take that from him, you honored it. Bumpy stood. Hagen's alive. The crowd beat him, but he'll live to stand trial. And the others? Bumpy's expression went cold. There were 3 shooters. Hagen's in custody. The other 2 ran. Will they escape? No. The priest understood. Vengeance won't heal this wound. Maybe not. Bumpy turned toward the door. But it's all I have left to give him. Malcolm X's funeral was held on February 27th. 3,000 people packed Faith Temple Church. Thousands more lined Harlem streets. Bumpy Johnson stood in the back, not with dignitaries, not with family, just against the wall, watching. Betty Shabazz, Malcolm's widow, saw him. Their eyes met across the crowded church. She nodded once, small, sad, acknowledging. She knew. She knew Bumpy had been there. She knew he'd tried. She knew Thomas Hagen was in custody because Bumpy made sure he couldn't run. After the service, Bumpy walked alone to Ferncliff Cemetery. He stood at the edge of the open grave, looking down at the casket. From his pocket, he pulled out something small, his straight razor, the one he'd carried for 30 years, the symbol of his power, his survival, his code. He placed it gently on the coffin lid. You died standing, Bumpy said quietly, just like you wanted. But the men who killed you, they're going to die scared. That's my promise. And Bumpy Johnson kept that promise. Within 6 months, Norman 3X Butler was found. Not by police, by Bumpy's network, hiding in the Bronx. Bumpy didn't kill him. He called the FBI. Anonymously, gave them the address, let the system handle it. Because Malcolm had asked him not to kill for revenge. And Bumpy kept that promise. The 3rd shooter was never officially identified. Some say he left the country. Some say he never existed. But in Harlem, they tell a different story. They say Bumpy found him. They say what Bumpy did made the man wish he'd turned himself in. Nobody knows for sure. And Bumpy never talked about it. Bumpy Johnson died in 1968, 3 years after Malcolm. Heart attack at Wells Restaurant in Harlem. Just an old warrior's heart finally giving out. At his funeral, someone asked one of Bumpy's oldest friends about his greatest moment. The friend thought for a long time. February 21st, 1965, when he stood in that ballroom with his gun drawn and respected Malcolm's choice, even though it killed him inside. That's when Bumpy proved he wasn't just a gangster, he was a man of honor. Bumpy Johnson had killed for money, for power, for respect, for survival. But on that Sunday afternoon, he chose not to kill, chose to honor a friend's wish, chose to let Malcolm X die standing with dignity on his own terms. Sometimes the hardest thing a man with a gun can do is not pull the trigger. Sometimes the bravest thing a killer can do is let someone die. Malcolm X died standing, and Bumpy Johnson made sure the world remembered that. Drop a comment. Would you have pulled the trigger? And if you want more untold stories from Harlem's legendary protector, you know what to do.